Good evening. Good evening. Happy Monday. I apologize for my tardiness, child. I was having the technical issues. I made the mistake of not setting this live up before today and didn't realize that I hadn't done that. So it took me a little second to get it all together, but we are here now. Okay. So I see 3 over on YouTube. Hello, TikTok. Let's see. Brienne, good evening. Chrisette, good evening. Hello. Before I take off on chapter 12, let me also update my little notebook on where you guys are at with your reading. So how are we doing? What chapter we on? Uh-oh. I do my pen, Lord. How we doing with that? Chapter 12. Okay, perfect. Any questions on the reading so far? Anything that you've gone over that doesn't make sense? Any terms that you're reading that you would like some clarification on? No. Okay. All right. Oh, and the pen I found ain't working. I'm like Three Stooges today, I'm telling you. I spent my morning in the garden, and I think that's just where I should stay all day. That pen doesn't want to open. Let's see if we got another one. It's giving up its useful life. No moss. Okay. Oh, heck. Somewhere there's a right utensil. All right. Here we go. So I booze on 15. Okay, beautiful. I love that. So we can get going. Okay, so now let me make my little note. I got Brienne. And I got Chrisette. And so. Okay, and then for your flashcards, how are you guys doing? Have you made flashcards all the way through the chapters that you're on? You got too many? I am still working on you. Okay. All right. What chapter are you on, if you know, Brienne, with your flashcards? Okay, yes. Okay. Chrisette, do you have that scheduled? And is that HSPA or are you taking CBSPD? Okay, do chapter 10. Okay, Brienne. All right. Looks like I got Sabu. Okay, Chrisette, and I got Brienne. HSPA. Okay, cool. You got it scheduled already? Or you know when you're getting ready to take it? This is for this one. Chris said, do you know what chapter you on with your flashcards? Sabu, do you know what chapter you're on with your flashcards? Mailed it in. Okay. Yay! I'm so excited. So then we need to get back on that schedule and get cracking then, huh? 15. Okay. So you doing your flashcards as you go for your reading. Okay, great. All right. Chris said chapter 13. Okay. Cool beans. All right. Let's get into it. So we're going to go over 12 today. And if we have a little time, I want to do some quizzing. We have some time left. And then when we meet on Wednesday, we'll be going over 13 and 14. And I structured them both so that they fit back into that hour slot so we can get back on that schedule doing 2 chapters at a time. That being said, of course, as I always say, if you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to send them along, put them in the chat. You can send an email. I'm more than available to you. All right. All right. So let's get chapter 12 notes up on the screen. When we met last Wednesday, we went over chapter 11's complex instruments. Or did we? Hold on. Let me make sure I'm not rushing y'all. Or did we do chapter 10? Let me make sure. I feel like I'm jumping ahead. Let's see. Going like that. Going like that. Going go over here. This was 8. Instrumentation last Wednesday. And we made it up to chapter 12. We did a little bit of the beginning of chapter 12. Okay, perfect. I didn't want to be repeating something. Okay, so let me fast forward these slides. Chapter 12. Okay. So last Wednesday when we met, we talked about complex instrumentation. We went through various service lines they would be used for and what makes them complex versus basic instrumentation that we might find in like our minor and major sets. So we've looked at decontamination when we receive it dirty from the operating room. We've gone through identifying those instruments in decontam and prep and pack, what we would be looking for, checking them for sharpness, making sure that they're clean, making sure that they work the way they're supposed to, lubricating them if need be, flushing them if need be, right? So now we're in a portion where within the assembly and packaging area, we need to actually learn how to get them ready for sterilization, whether that be a terminal sterilization via steam, or if it's a terminal sterilization via hydrogen peroxide, ethylene oxide, whatever the case may be, we still have to do some pre-work to get it ready to go. All right, so chapter 12. First things first, and this is the same no matter what area of the sterile processing department you're entering into. First thing is dress code and hygiene. So you're going to have clean surgical attire. You're going to have scrubs on. You're going to have gowns, and you're going to have a hair cover. Now the gowns will be if you're going into the DPM area. If you're going into prep and pack, you won't necessarily be wearing a gown, but you will have a hair cover on. And if you have facial hair, if you have a mustache or a beard, you're going to wear a beard cover and your clean scrubs. Highly advised by some of those governing bodies that we follow, like AMI or ARN, that you wear shoes that are dedicated to the facility. What does that mean? That means you buy them, you bring them into the hospital, you wear them, you leave them at the hospital. You do not take them home. You keep them in the locker, and you only wear them at work. Now, why would we need to do this? My YouTubers, somebody tell me in the chat, why would we need to do this? Because we've actually talked about this a few times already. So why are we talking about that? Looking at why we would want to wear dedicated shoes in the sterile processing department. It's also important to remove any jewelry. It's advised that you do not wear artificial nails or heavy makeup that's going to be transferable. So not necessarily talking about what's on your face, but anything, that's going to be transferable. All right. So I'm looking for you in the chat. Why would I want to have dedicated shoes in the sterile processing department? Okay, traffic control. So being that we just talked about all these clean things that we have to wear for bacteria, right? We don't want to be tracking germs in and out of the department. We don't want to be bringing things in off of our shoes into the hospital. Stuff drops on the floor, you pick it up. Now that bug is traveling all over the place. If we're working in the sterile processing department, it has to be a traffic controlled environment. So your decontamination area is your highest hazard risk. Why is decontam the highest hazard risk? Somebody drop in the chat. Why is that? Why is decontam the heaviest hazard in sterile process? So you're going to want to control the traffic to that area because there's potential for people to get hurt. So we want to control the traffic there. Assembly and packaging area, we want to control the trafficking because it's a clean area. We just spent all this time in decontam making sure that we got all the bugs off this stuff, all the blood off this stuff. Now I'm going to bring it onto the clean side. I need to control the traffic in that area in order to maintain that cleanliness. Then the last place we're going to do some traffic control is in our sterile storage areas. So our sterile storage areas are restricted to properly dressed personnel. And then what's properly dressed personnel? Somebody with that clean surgical attire on, hat on, beard or facial hair is covered, and they have clean hands. Okay. So now let's move into instrument testing and inspection. We talked about this just briefly at the end of our class last Wednesday when I showed you guys the InsulScan tester that tests the insulation on your minimally invasive surgical instruments to make sure that all of that rubber coating is intact and that when they connect it to any type of machines, that the electricity is flowing through the instrument but not jumping out any cracks in the insulation and harming the patient. Okay, so with instrument testing and inspection, this is just a very basic list, but essentially we're going to be checking scissors. We want to make sure that they cut smoothly through their test material. We talked about that red, yellow resistance band that we use to test scissors to make sure that they're not jagged. We want to do that every single time we receive them in the prep and pack from surgery. So the first thing you're going to do after you get them at your desk is check them to make sure they're sharp. If they're not cutting properly, we need to put them out for repair. If they're sticky, kind of not really moving smoothly, you may want to lubricate them. Needle holders, they should grip firmly, they should clasp, they should close, right? We've talked about how needle holders have that ratcheted end on the inside of its rings that is intended for it to close shut and hold the suture in place. If I'm able to close it and then it pops right back open, that is not a useful surgical instrument for me to put in my surgeon's hands. That would need to come out for repair. We also want to close those needle holders together and make sure that the teeth, the tips match and approximate, right? Because if they're off, if my tips of my needle holders are meeting like this, they're not going to hold my needle, right? So we have to make sure that needle holders in any type of jawed instrument is clasping properly. Forceps, same concept. Tissue forceps, you can think of it like a little tweezer. They come in various sizes from a 1 inch to 12, 13, 14 inches long, depending on what they're being used for. Forceps have a mouth that or jaws that close, right? So just like the needle holder, they need to be approximate. They need to meet each other. If they don't, it needs to be out for repair. The other thing with forceps is some of them have teeth. So we need to make sure that those teeth meet together. So just like a human jaw, you want to make sure that when the mouth closes, all the teeth are in alignment. If not, it's not a useful surgical tool to put in a surgeon's hands. Ratcheted instruments, I just talked about this. I talked about it in relation to needle holders, but there's all manner of ringed instruments that have ratchets in them that are meant to close. You want to test every single one of them. That could look like testing hundreds of instruments in a size of this cardiac tray. There could be hundreds of them. You must check them out because I know for sure you would not want your surgeon to receive a surgical instrument with a ratchet that does not close. Here they go, thinking that they're about to clamp your valve and move on to do something else, but oh no, it's not sticking together. It's not working, right? So it's your duty, it's your job to check those things and make sure they work properly before they're sterilized. Surgeon can't do that. Laparoscopic instruments. We've talked about this already at the end of class last week and just briefly today, but you're going to always test the insulation of laparoscopic instruments before you send them off for sterilization. Main reason being you want to protect your patient and your surgical team from electrical burns. If the insulation has cracks in it, then that means electricity can jump through the insulation, and that is not what we want to happen because that current is meant to go to the tip of that instrument, okay? All right, last thing up there is, now we've gone through this surgical tray, we checked it. I have a couple of scissors that are just too sticky. I tried to lubricate them. It's not giving that smooth cut that I know my surgeon needs. Okay, I had a couple ratchet instruments. Most of them were good, but one or two of them, they're not really clasping tight enough. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put them out for repair. Now, the work is not over yet. You have to then identify and label that tray as missing those instruments. Why? Because your surgical team is going to be counting on your set list to determine if they have all the surgical instruments they started their case with at the end of their case. Okay, so you're going to be using your set list to determine how many of which widget goes. I need one Met scissor, I need one Mayo scissor, I need 16 crowd clamps, I need 16 Mayo clamps, I need 2 tissue forceps. Okay, this tray is ready to go. You're going to account for that on your set list, and you're going to include that set list in either inside the tray or in some product that attaches it to the outside of the tray. And if that tray is supposed to have 16 Mayo clamps, but you only have 14, you have to indicate that on the outside of the surgical tray so that the surgical team knows what they're working with. They may have workarounds where they may go pull those in individual pill packs, or they may tell you, that's not going to work for me. I need 16 clamps. So I need you to get me another tray that has those clamps in it so that I have all the clamps that I need, right? So you're not going to be able to have that level of communication with them after you close the box because I can't see the count sheet anymore. So somewhere that information has to be clearly labeled about missing instruments. You also want to ensure that your surgical team is aware of shortages, right? So just like it's not enough to put the instrument out for repair, you need to label the tray. It's not enough to just label the tray. Somebody then needs to be communicated with so that they know that that is missing ahead of it going into the surgical room. Finding out when it's time to put a patient on the table that you're missing instruments that you need is absolutely the wrong time to be finding out that you're missing instruments that you need. So that's totally on the sterile practicing department to communicate that, because no one is going to know that from outside of the department. Now, that being said, there may be functions that you use within your surgical tracking systems to help you facilitate that conversation, where it may generate what we call a missing list based on all of the trays that are being put together by techs that are being labeled as missing. It will then coalesce that information into a report, and that report can be sent out to department leads, right? So your surgeon leads, your sterile processing leads, to let them know what is in their trays and what is not in their trays. And then the last thing about this is it prevents delays, and it cuts down on safety risk during surgery, because again, finding out at the time of cut is not the time to find out you're missing things. It could be something benign like a Mayo scissor, but it could also be one of those complex instruments that we don't have another one of, right? It may be something so critical that your surgeon may potentially cancel the surgical case altogether, because that there's no need for them to go ahead if then proceed if they don't have that instrumentation. So just another layer of why it is so critical to have strong communication in this field. Okay, so did I skip ahead too? There we go. All right. So you have now checked the instrument set list. You've accounted for everything that you need being clean, being functional, and being available, and or you've made a note of what is not available. Now it's time to package this up. We've done all we can as far as making sure it's clean and making sure it works right and it's available. We're going to package it, and we're going to put what we call internal and external indicators on the tray. These are chemical indicators that are going to color change and show the person looking at it from the outside, because remember, we're putting these into a container and then we're going to sterilize it. And we cannot open that container until we get ready to have surgery. So something has to be on the outside of that thing, that set or that pack, to let me know if it's sterile or not, because I can't open it up and go, oh, it's sterile, close the top. Can't do that. So I'm going to use internal indicators on the inside that as soon as that tray is open, shows my scrub tech or my surgeon or my nurse that yes, everything inside of this pack, steam came in here and was all over the place. Hydrogen peroxide came in here and touched every instrument. And how do I know that? Because here's this chemical indicator that changed because it was exposed to Sterile. Now, the external indicator, that one's going to be something that I have on the outside of my tray. Usually it's on the front of the tray. Sometimes they're now being engineered to be on the top of the lid, but it's going to be some type of card or disc that I put in that also has a color change strip that once exposed to sterilant changes color. So it might go from like a light pink to a dark brown, or they may go from white to red. It really just depends on the product. Let me see if they have one in here to show you guys. Here we go. All right. So these are internal indicators. These are going to go inside of the set with the surgical instruments. And you can see that it starts out as one color and it changes to another. Or with these ones over in this corner, it will start out with nothing on the front of it. And when I open up the pack, it should be completely black because it's been exposed to sterile. Okay. And then externally, you're going to see same concept, color changing products. Hopefully you can see that. That go on the outside of the tray to indicate that it's been exposed to a sterile. Okay. So you're going to put locks on your trays. You're going to seal your pill packs, and you're going to get them ready for sterilization. Now, the individual set has been prepared for sterilization. Another way that you're going to use color change to test if the sterilizer is doing its job is with a product that we call PCD, or a process challenge device. This will absolutely be on your test. Process challenge devices. Become very familiar with them. Process challenge devices are used to test your sterilizer's effectiveness, because again, we can't get in there and say, oh yes, I can confirm from inside the sterilizer it has reached 276 degrees. I'm dead now, but I can tell you that it's sterilized, right? I can't be in there. So something I have to put into the machine to tell me what happened when I closed the door. Did it do all the things that I wanted it to do? And I'm going to use that process challenge device because it contains two things. One, a biological indicator, and then two, one of those color change indicators. So the biological indicator is going to be a vial of liquid that contains live bacteria that are safe for human touch, but that we're going to use and we're going to keep alive, and we're going to test if the sterilizer reached its temperature or its proper chemical exposure by testing it after the sterilizer cycle is completed and seeing, are those bugs still alive? There's a machine that you put it in called an incubator. And once that test is done and it says, yes, we've incubated, there's nothing alive in here, you can release those instruments to the sterile storage units. And then we're going to also check to make sure that the chemical change or the color change happened on the chemical indicator. So a process challenge device will always contain the biological or chemical indicator, one or the other, or both. Most of them are both, especially if you're dealing with steam sterilization. It's going to be both. Okay, rigid containers. So rigid containers, as you guys saw at the end of class last Wednesday, you can actually wrap surgical instruments in what we call Chem Guard or blue wrap. We'll take a look at that again today. And then a lot of our surgical sets are housed in metal boxes. So we will have a metal container that is perforated. Usually, some of them now are designed to be completely solid. And we will put the surgical tray inside of the metal box, lock it. The locks will have a color change indicator on the side of them, and we will place them into the sterilizer. Rigid containers, especially if they are perforated, meaning that they have holes on the lids to let the sterilant in and out, they will require a filter. So you would, as a sterile processing tech, place a filter into the tops and bottoms of that rigid container prior to putting a clean sterile set into it. And they are single use. You must change them every single time you use them. Typically, your operating room will throw them away once they open up their package. They should not really be making it back down to you in the sterile processing department in your decontam. But if you were to receive them in decontam, you just throw them in the trash. This is also a time you're going to inspect the locks on the rigid container. Make sure that they latch. It's the same as the scissor ratchet. If it doesn't close together, it's not useful. If you cannot get the rigid container to close properly, it's not useful. Why? Because it's not only going to let sterilant in during the sterilization process, but it's going to let air and bugs flow in too because it's not closed. It's not sealed. So that's not useful to us. We want to ensure that it is set up for proper drying. So it should be free of really any moisture. There honestly shouldn't be any moisture around you by the time you're packing for sterilization. And then they must be checked regularly for damage. So your facility may have a process set up where every so often one service line is looked at. But more than likely, as an individual technician, you're going to need to inspect your rigid containers each time you get ready to package a set. And the same as your instruments, if you find that they need repair, remove them from service, get another one, and move on. If they don't have another one in that size, use a blue wrap and move on. But at no point should you be using a rigid container that is in disrepair. Why? Because it's going to compromise your ability to not only sterilize your equipment, but to maintain sterility after your sterilization process is complete. All right, so we sterilized it. We wrapped it. We put it into the steam sterilizer. It did its thing. It exposed it to a high temperature of steam. It had a drying cycle. Now that big casket is back open. I pull my instruments out. I let them cool down. If it was a hydrogen peroxide sterilization process, that, remember, it doesn't use a high temperature. It uses hydrogen peroxide as a chemical sterilant. It's going to close the door. It's going to expose it to hydrogen peroxide. It's going to exhaust it. It's going to open the door. Now that thing can go into sterile storage. Once the steam ones are cooled down, it can now go into sterile storage. Once I'm in sterile storage, the whole name of the game of sterile storage is maintaining sterility. So I'm going to be doing my airflow exchanges. I'm going to make sure that this room stays at an appropriate temperature. If at any point this room drops down below an appropriate temperature, I'm going to have a game plan for remediation because I know now I have to reprocess those instruments. There will be policies and processes put in place for you to know what that is. You're going to find a lot of those guidelines in your AAMI guidelines that will let you know what temperatures is safe for the rooms to be at, how long the room can be out of range before you have to start reprocessing. And I'm going to just tell you something. I've been in the field for 16 years. There's been a handful of times that I've had to recall. And when we say recall, it means I'm telling the operating room that something that I gave them that was sterile is maybe not sterile anymore. Or something I gave them that is sterile, the sterility has been compromised. I cannot assure it anymore. I need you to bring it back to the sterile processing department so we can start that process over of cleaning it and sterilizing it and making sure that it's safe and sound. When you're looking at a sterile storage room with hundreds of surgical kits in it, that can feel like an overwhelming task because it is. But just like you got all of them up there before, you're going to get them up there again. Don't be afraid. The reason why I'm telling you this is just I don't want you to ever be afraid to understand that you might have to do reprocessing at a massive level sometimes. Sometimes it's not your fault. Maybe there was a HVAC problem, a heating problem, and the room wasn't cooled properly. And so you came in from overnight and it was out of range. And now you have to reprocess that room. Or maybe there was a storm and you lost power. There's all these different things that could take place. But I want to make sure that you have in your mind that you have to be ready to jump to that work. Just going to organize yourself, and then you're going to be doing the same thing that you're already doing. Clean it, check it, sterilize it, put it in sterile storage. Okay. You might be in a situation where you need to triage or figure out, what do I need to reprocess first, right? Because I'm going to need to use it sooner than later. But don't let it be something where it's like, oh, I'm taking off my sterile gloves and I quit. I can't be involved in reprocessing 100 instruments overnight. You can do it. You can do it. Okay, so with sterility maintenance, some basic things about sterility maintenance. Your book has so much more information about it. So again, I encourage you, as you guys are doing the reading, if you have questions, ask. Okay, but really high level basic things about sterility maintenance. You have to store in a climate controlled area, right? So that's what I mean when I say the airflow is being monitored, the temperature is being monitored, the humidity is being monitored. It's a climate that is controlled. If it goes out of range, there should either be somebody that is manually checking those rooms on a daily basis to make sure that they're in range, or a lot of facilities these days will have some type of automatic system, a machine that is inside of each of those rooms that can even send me a text message and tell me when my sterile storage is out of range. Something else about sterile storage being out of range, just a note. If you do find that happens, it must be documented. And you also must document when that room goes back into service, right? So I can't just have a note that says that on Monday, Alessandra found sterile storage was out of range for 4 hours and she took the room down. And then the next day, the next note is just me checking the temperature again. There has to be some type of note that tells what I did. Whether that's who I contacted, as in I put a work order in, here's work order number X, Y, and Z. And then Frank came down from maintenance. He fixed the HVAC machine. He brought the room back up to temperature. I checked it again 4 hours later. It was in range. Now I'm returning this room to service. There has to be clear communication there. You will be surveyed on your climate control records for any sterile storage area, which includes your decontam, because you have dirty instruments in there. So you're going to be documenting this information for decontam, processing side, assembly room, sterile storage, the sterilization area, all have to be documented. Okay, so anytime those rooms go out of range, it must be documented and communicated. You're going to avoid stacking trays to prevent damage. Now, this will be slightly impossible depending on where you are. You got to do what you can do with where you are. The sterile processing industry recognizes that storage of sterile instruments is complicated. You at times will have to stack maybe 2 or 3 instruments high, but I encourage you to try to do your best not to go any higher than that, especially if you're dealing with instruments that are not in rigid containers, right? So we're talking about ones that are in that blue wrap. Reason being, the weight of having several trays on top of each other can cause microscopic holes in the chem guard, because that metal from inside of the tray is pushing down on the outside or from the inside of that wrap. So it's not encouraged. And then the last thing is, you're always going to be using a FIFO inventory system. FIFO is first in, first out. So when you, hey Latoya, when you put your sterile storage instruments in, you're going to take out the first one you put in, right? So if I have 10 sets of trays and today I reprocess sets 1 through 5 and I put them in sterile storage, and then tomorrow I process sets 5 through 10 and I put them in sterile storage, when I come back day 3 to pull a tray, I should be pulling from sets 1 through 5 because they were the first ones to come into the sterile storage. They should be the first ones to go out. So that's FIFO. You're going to use FIFO. FIFO is going to be on your test, and you're going to use FIFO for the rest of your career, whether it's with your sterile instruments or your sterile packages that you receive, right? So if I buy a box of alcohol, I'm going to use first what came in. The first that's in is the first that's out. I don't buy 4 boxes of alcohol and then put them in a cabinet somewhere and forget about them and then order 10 more and use the other 10 first and then go, no. They were the last ones in. They should be the last ones out. All right. No problem. I'm glad that you did that safely. Latoya said she was listening while in transit. I'm glad you did that safely. All right. So we've covered chapter 12. Like I said, very basic high level information. If you guys have any other questions about the reading, let me know. There's quite a bit of vocabulary along with chapters 12 or 11 and 12, because with that complex instrument and also with you guys learning about these wrapping techniques, right? So at the end of class last week, I showed you guys what some sequential wrap looks like. We're going to look at that video again. But wrapping, I will say, is just one of those things that you're not going to learn it until you get into the department. Somebody's going to have to show it to you. You're going to do it over and over again, and then you'll be all right. I remember the first time I learned how to wrap basins. The girl that showed me how to do it, she did it so fast, and I was like, what? What did you just do? Like, how did you just do that? Then there got to be a point about 3 years in where I could wrap my basins without looking. I could have a conversation like this and wrap my basins because it was muscle memory at that point. So it will feel intimidating. I'm not going to say you're not going to feel a little nervous when you come into the department, but just know that once you get into the groove of it and you do it over and over, it will become second nature to you, just like what driving was. At one point, none of us knew how to do that. Somebody took us out and let us do it a little bit, get a little practice. We started doing it on our own. Now what they said, we've been in the corners, as they say. Okay, so Takesha said, will you ever start over from chapter 1 with a new class? Yes. So with a new class. Right now, I'm aiming on doing another class in May because it's looking like we should wrap this one up in April. But yes, and if you're late coming into it and you just want to go back and look at the old lives, if you go to the YouTube page, the Candray Institute YouTube page, and you click on live, you will be able to see the past classes for this cohort. And I plan on keeping them up for a couple of weeks after you guys finish before I take them back down. All right? Because so far right now, everything that we are doing is free. My next class will not be. All right. So we looked at complex instrumentation. We looked at how to package our instrumentation. I want to show you guys that video again of wrapping. But before we move on out of chapter 12, I also want to talk about pill packs. And I want to talk about time-related sterility versus event-related sterility. Okay, so pill packs. These are something that outside of the sterile processing industry, you probably have seen the most. You're absolutely welcome. Yes, notes. Yes, thank you, Latoya. Thank you. So last Wednesday, I talked about this. I gave up the spirit of perfection. I was trying to put them notes all in the same font. I gave it up because I wanted to make sure that y'all had this, because I know some people are getting ready to take the test. Like Chrisette said, she sent her papers off. She's waiting to get her information back from HSPA so she can schedule with Prometrics. I went ahead on the Candray Institute website, on the Wix website, and put all of the notes through chapter 12 and the 2 quizzes that we did together. Those are all on the website. Okay. And I saw one more thing. Yay, yes, those are available. Notes are on the website. So you can go onto the website, go into the file share section. You can download everything from the class up to this point. And then, you're taking your exam in August. Now, are you doing the CBSPD exam or are you doing the HSPA exam? Just for my curiosity. All right, so pill packs. What is pill pack? A pill pack is a bag, essentially. It has a paper backing and then this plastic film that goes over the front that allows for sterilant to get in when the package is heated up or it's exposed to that, like things like hydrogen peroxide or ETO. And then it seals and it doesn't let things come back and forth after that until you open it. Now, as the ladies, you might be mostly familiar. Hopefully, y'all can see that and pray. You may be mostly familiar with pill packs. That's the rigid container, and you see the little pill pack there. They're gonna seal it. You may be familiar with them from going to the gynecological office. Usually, our speculums will be in a pill pack where they open up the bag and put the instrument out onto the sterile table. Okay, we use pill packs to hold a few instruments at a time. You can do just one single instrument, which is how we usually keep backups. So like, for instance, I didn't send off my major tray to the operating room. They needed 16 Kelly clamps, right? We talked about earlier, but I only had 12 for mine. Maybe there's some backups and pill packs that are stored in the OR. Also, we use these for clinics. So almost all clinic instrumentation will be in little pill packs. They come in very large sizes. And then lastly, we will use them for small trays. So there may be some that have multiple instruments inside of them, and you fill it up and you send it off to the operating room. Now, that being said, pill packs have, some of them need to be heat sealed. So you'll be using the machine to do that. And then some of them are like envelopes, essentially, where you peel off a sticker and then you stick them closed. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about with sterility maintenance is time-related sterility versus event-related sterility. So when you sterilize a surgical set, it is considered sterile until either one of these two things happen. So time-related. It describes time-related as a package that is considered sterile until a specific expiration date is reached, right? So just like my food has an expiration date, some packaging that you buy or some products that you buy in the operating room will have an expiration date that once it hits this day, you can't use it anymore. We can't guarantee its efficacy. We can't guarantee its sterility. You got to throw it away. That's time-related sterility. Then the second thing you may have is event-related sterility. Event-related sterility means this package is sterile forever unless an event happens that compromises its sterility. Now, we talked about one earlier. If my sterile storage goes out of temperature range for too long, that's an event that is compromising sterility. I can't use that anymore. Another event may be I dropped it on the floor and it has a small cut in it now. Can't use it. An event has occurred that has compromised sterility. Those terms are coming from the Joint Commission and from the Association of Perioperative Registered Nurses, or ARN, right? So we talked about those governing bodies. Those are two of them. And they both are telling us of what time-related sterility is and what event-related sterility is. This is something that absolutely will be on your test, and it's also something that's going to come up in your sterile processing life, because a lot of times, like maybe over in the ER, they got a new nurse. She's looking through all the sterile packages. She's seeing some expiration dates, but she doesn't know if everything needs to go. She might bring you a little cart of instruments and say, hey, these haven't been sterilized since 2005. Are they still good? Now, if I hadn't read this book and taken this test, if I was not aware of the Joint Commission guidelines, if I did not know about the ARN guidelines, I might think, yeah, actually, I don't know. It hasn't been sterilized since 2005. That's a lot of years. I think we should just go ahead and reprocess. It's probably no good anymore. Perfectly fine logic. If you've got the time to reprocess, I would say go for it. But in all actuality, if it is an event-related package, and it's been within its temperature ranges, and it has not been compromised, there's no holes in the packaging, its sterility is intact. So you could just be putting your department through extra work just because. Trust me, I've done both. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, but especially if it was crunch time, right? Let's say that that instrument was needed for a patient that just came into the operating room. They're bleeding out. We need this widget. We haven't used it in a million years. We don't usually have to call for it. We look at it. It hasn't been sterilized since 2005. Nurse calls you in the sterile processing department freaking out and saying, I got this thing. I don't know if it's safe. Can I use it? Well, if you have the knowledge to know that it's event related, you can tell her very calmly and confidently that yes, it's safe for you to use it. It's event-related packaging. If you inspect that package and it's not been compromised, it's safe for you to use. Right? So it's knowledge that you will become fluid in how to utilize as you go through your career. Because trust me, I have had folks come to me and want me to reprocess a whole sterile storage room because it's got a bunch of old stuff in it. And sometimes I have the bandwidth with my operating room and my staff. Maybe I have the bandwidth, but sometimes maybe I don't. And it feels good to be able to say, according to my standards, right? This is not just a thing I made up, but according to my standards. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. I've got a couple review questions for chapter 12. So, chapter 12, we talked about packaging. Why should incomplete trays be labeled? Why is it not okay to have a surgical set be missing instruments and there is no communication on the outside of the tray that there's anything missing? Why should incomplete trays be labeled? Is it A, to alert the surgical team of missing instruments, B, to prevent damage to other instruments, C, to reduce sterilization time, or D, to ensure proper weight balance? All right, I see the A's coming. All right. So yes, that is the right answer. A, to alert the surgical team that instruments are missing. Okay, so somebody said the second one. There's no wrong answers here. Let me tell you why that it's not the second one. You are going to be doing things inside your surgical trays to prevent damage inside the trays. That might look like things like tip protectors. It might look like having sleeves that instruments slide into and go into the surgical trays. But you're communicating on the label that instruments are missing so that your surgical team is aware before they get into the room, before they put the patient to sleep, that not everything that's usually in that kit is available. Number 2, which type of packaging material requires seal integrity checks? Now, this I actually did not talk about, so let me explain that a little bit with the peel packs. I left that out. So with peel packs, you have to do a seal integrity check. Remember I said they have to be heat sealed, or you take that strip off like an envelope and stick it closed. You want to make sure that it got sealed all the way across, right? So just like sometimes when you make an envelope and you stick it, maybe one little piece over in the middle bubbles up and it's not all the way down. You want to make sure that the thing is completely sealed. Same reason why you would be checking your rigid container to make sure it's in proper functionality. It has to keep all the bugs. It's letting bugs in through its packaging, but once it's sealed, once it's cooled, it's not supposed to be letting stuff come back and forth. So your peel packs must have their seal integrity checks. Also, your rigid containers, you want to check the seals and make sure that they are intact. They may be like a rubber material. You want to make sure that they're not cracked. They don't have holes in them. There's no chunks missing. The seal has integrity. And then the last one on there was sterilization wraps. So with sterilization wraps, when you close them, you're going to tape them shut. We're going to watch that video again. So same thing. It should be just a closed seal. I'm going to make sure everything is closed in. Number 3, what is the purpose of internal chemical indicators? Why do we use those? Is it A, to identify instrument sets, B, to verify sterilization conditions inside the package, C, to reduce sterilization time, or D, to track expiration dates? And I saw y'all D, y'all D's. It was definitely all of the above. Anything that you close up, you have to check the seals and make sure it actually close. Whether it's container, peel pack, or wrap. All right, did I see answers come through for 3? I see a B. I see another B. Yes. Okay. You put an internal indicator inside of the surgical tray, close the tray, expose it to sterilant. Why? So that when you open that tray, you can visually see something that tells you that sterilant was here. It touched everything inside of here. It verifies that the sterilization conditions have been met. Something that you can't otherwise see. Something that your scrub tech team, your RN team, your surgeon would otherwise not be able to see. Okay. All right. So we are at time for next week. We're going to take a look at chapters 13 and 14. Before we hop off today, I want to replay that sterilization wrap video for you guys. Let me get that queued up. And I want to talk through some of the things that we saw in this video that we learned about in this last chapter. So let me get that up on the screen for you guys. All right, here we go. And then tiki-taki, I'll try to move y'all around. One sec. Oh, and really just for your information, that Halyard sign, icon, logo that you saw pop up, Halyard is a third-party manufacturer in the space that creates products that we use all over the sterile processing department. The one that we're looking at is called a ChemGuard. So that's that blue wrap. And I want you guys to notice that it's one color on the outside, one color on the inside. And I also want you to notice that along the edge, hold on, let me see if I can move y'all. Along the edge, there's a little strip that looks like a hem. That's because it's quite actually sewn together. Okay, there we go. So there's this little part here that's kind of like a hem, and then it's two different colors. These are layers of fabric that have been woven together, okay? So that's when we say sequential wrapping. When you see in your book it says sequential wrapping, it's because typically it's multiple layers of fabric. Now, back when sterile processing first started, that used to be multiple, like we would wrap it and then get another thin one, wrap it again, get another thin one, wrap it again. This product came along and has all that stuff together. Notice that she did not tuck that wrap underneath the tray. She pushed it up against the edge. And bring this pad back. When the operating room opens up, they're going to be looking for that little triangle tab to pull the wrap away from the surgical tray. She's going to create her corner. And then the same thing, she's going to give them a little triangular flap back that wrap in the operating room. She's going to complete this process by making this screws again, holding this wrap into itself, like an envelope. That's why they call it an envelope fold. And then notice again, she has that triangle. Now, she's placing 2 pieces of tape on the surgical tray. That's somewhere I want to make sure my seal has integrity. And then lastly, she has a tray instrument label that has the tray name. It tells where the tray goes. It has information about when it was processed, what the temperature sterilization needs to be at. And she would also use another one of these if it was missing any instruments to communicate that with her surgeon. So I wanted you to have a sense of that before and after having this conversation about assembly and packaging, just so you guys are aware how that product works. Still talking to me. Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's all I have for chapters 11 and 12. When we meet back on Wednesday, we're going to go over 13 and 14. As always, I highly encourage you guys to keep making your flashcards as you go and take your flashcards with you when you're out and about. Use them to study. Also, if you haven't yet, it's probably a good time for you to hand your flashcards to somebody else and let them quiz you. Okay? It's really important that you get that vocabulary down prior to your exam. And in the in-between time, if you guys have any questions, you know where to find me. You can send me an email at candrayinstitute@gmail.com. I will get that up on the screen for you, just in case for some strange reason you don't have it at this point. You can also send me a DM on the TikTok page for the Candray Institute. And then I also wanted to remind you guys, because I know we did the assignment over contact times a few days ago now. It's like a few classes ago now. But I want to say only 2 people actually went on there and posted their contact time. So I don't want you to be missing stuff, forgetting about stuff. So try to make sure you make some time to go on there and log your assignment for contact times. If you don't remember what that is, that was going and finding a bottle of any type of disinfectant in your house that you have that you use on a regular basis, whether that's bleach, Lysol, Comet, whatever it may be, and flip over the bottle. You're going to be reading the instructions for use that tell you how to use that product. And on there, it should tell you how many minutes your surface needs to be wet in order for the disinfectant to kill all the bugs that it claims that it kills, which also should be on the back of the bottle. Okay, so I know a couple people have already, I want to say 2 or 3 people have already got in there and done that, but I have not seen all of you yet. So make sure to check that out. And I will see you all on Wednesday at 4:45 Central Standard Time. Have a beautiful week, y'all.